What's going on YouTube? My name is Mr. Crippled, and today I'm going to be bringing you my difficulty tier list for Smite 2. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep up with any future content, I will be leaving a link to my Twitch and my Discord in the description below. Now, a couple caveats to this. I will be minorly talking about the aspects as well. Um, Also, this doesn't have any bearing about how good I think the character is or how bad I think the character is. This just is kind of what I think about how difficult each character is and how easy they are to pick up and just play with. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, Achilles, I think some studying is going to be needed with him. Not because I think he's overall super difficult, but knowing how to use his combat dodge, knowing who to execute, when to execute, um learning how to do the stun in between your dashes, that could take a little bit of practice. You're not instantly going to be able to do that the second you pick this character up, but he isn't super difficult, and I think after a little bit of time playing him, you could have him mastered pretty. Agni, I think he's a little bit, he's somewhere around this range. Mostly trying to get down his insta stuns, and because without his not being level 5, knowing how to safely clear and knowing how to step up to the wave and poke properly before you even get your ult is going to be really integral into playing this character. Even when you're playing him with the aspect and you're focused more on the autos, knowing how to get this stun properly to maximize the amount of damage you get can take a little bit of practice, but overall, I think he's right. Aladdin, this might be a little controversial. PhD required. I think he's. I don't think he's one of the harder characters in the game to play, but he has a lot going on. Um, Knowing when to use your charges, knowing when to use your wishes, knowing how and who to use your ult on, knowing how to combo properly with him, deciding whether or not you want to go magical or intelligence build because both of them are pretty viable, knowing how to engage, who to focus, when to take out the tank, and when to just solo the DPS. Aladdin has a lot of things that he has to think about. Now, gameplay wise, you could argue that he could be somewhere right around here because, like I said, the kit itself isn't super difficult, but having to know everything around it and having that game plan, I think he's deserves to be right here. Matarasu, monkey with a suit on. She is pretty easy, but knowing when to pop that too, how to use it properly, boxing properly since she doesn't really have any real CC, and nothing really to stop their opponent besides the silence. But not a lot of gods right now are really hindered by that per se, and the silence only lasts a certain amount of time. And at the end of the day, she really is just holding R2. She just has a little bit of extra going on. Now, if we have the aspect I would say she's. I would still say she's right on her. Some studying needed. The pin is difficult. He is. I think he's one of the more pure versions of a hunter right now. Um, Knowing when to use your stun or your push back into a stun, rather, I guess. Whether to use that on a guide, whether to use that on the minion wave so you can clear properly. Positioning yourself, learning how to use your run move as something more aggressive, placing your totems down properly. I think that does take a little bit of practice, but at the end of the day, on her still is. You know what? Actually, I think he's right about here. Because at the end of the day, like I said, he is just holding R2. It's just learning how to use the pin and learning how to use the 1 properly and using the 3. But using the 3 sets up your 1 very perfectly because your leap has a knock up on it. So because they're knocked up and they can't really move, all you have to do is just readjust and then pin them to a wall. Now pinning them to a pillar, to one of your pillars, is difficult because it's a very small space and it requires a lot of precision. But other than that, I think he's ready. Anubis, Gorilla Brain. He's made to be easy. Now, is he good? Absolutely not. But drop 3, drop 1, profit. That's basically all it is. The only time it becomes like an kind of thing is when you try to start using the wrap, but you don't have to stay full screen for that. You can literally just walk up, press 2, and then profit. Aphrodite, I think she's right about here. Aphrodite, um, The only thing that I could say is probably difficult about Aphrodite is when you start playing her as a support. Because knowing who to focus on your heals and to separate, knowing who to ult, knowing who to ult is a little difficult, but it is just a get out of jail free button, a massive heal, a stun, and a get off me button. And she gets tanky for people just being around her, and it's not hard to hit one, hit three. So I think she doesn't really require like some stunning. She does. You kind of just need to understand how her ult works, and that's basic. Apollo, um, same thing. The one is brain dead easy. He has unlimited. He has a lot of good safety as far as his 2 and his 3 goes, and it's not hard to understand that the 2 is a stun. You can just walk away from people, and the 3 is a get out of jail free card. The ultimate is also free rotation on him, and you don't need to do a lot with Apollo to benefit with him. You don't even need to know how to play aggressive with him. You can literally just hold the wave. You can literally just hit the wave at your one and then walk away. This character is brain dead. Ares. Um, hmm, I'm gonna put him here. And yeah, full screen chains or full length chain is a little bit hard, but because of where the game is right now, and you know what? Actually, I take it back. I think he's more. I think he's more. There's a lot of people in this category where they're supposed to be a little bit difficult, but they have some things that make them hard. Like Ares, the chain is hard. The chain is a little bit difficult to hit at full screen. Again, you don't need to do that because you're going to be tanky, and you just walk up to them. But Ares is the type of support that helps the team simply by just being there. Because the 2 without the aspect gives protections and attack speed and basic attack damage, while also he has a cripple that counters half the cast. The only thing that you would need to really understand with Ares if you're first going into the game is knowing that you have 3 chains instead of just one. But you literally just hit the funny button over and over and then hit 3 and then hit ult and you benefit. So, but at the end of the day, hitting those chains is going to take a little bit of practice, but not so much practice as like Achilles or Agni. Artemis. Eh, gorilla brained. I don't think she's. Yeah, trap placement is difficult, but trap placement is not really like you just put it down somewhere and then somebody's gonna end up walking into it at some point unless you already have your max amount of traps out. Um, the ult is just a massive AoE team stun. She has an attack speed stim. She has a lot of people keep downplaying this. She has a really great poke button with her 3 that also slows attack speed and movement speed. So, I think people, and even though the character is just meh, it doesn't change the fact that this character is still pretty easy. Athena, I think Athena is still pretty monkey brained. She's not very hard. It's kind of like the same aspect with Apollo, where her ult can just put her wherever she needs to be. I think she's a really great um, beginner defensive support because she already has everything you need to be great as a support. She has a really hard hitting CC, not hard hitting, but she has a really great CC ability that will taunt them directly to you, making it to where it's harder for the team to focus the enemy to focus your team. She has an ultimate that can put her at any team fight wherever she wants, and now it also gives a health shield and protections. She also has a quick dash in that slows on hit, and then she still comes back with a damaging ability. Now that damaging ability, that by itself is kind of monkey with the Sunon because being able to get both hits every time can be a little bit difficult. But at the end of the day, the rest of the kit just kind of makes it really easy. A Willix, I think some study is going to be needed. Um, Knowing how how her flip works, timing your flip properly to make other enemy gods miss you, using positioning properly so you can get your the back hits on the 3 and ult properly. Um, Knowing when and where to use your 1 because engaging with your 1 every time is kind of bad on her. So there's a lot that kind of can go into a Willix, but once you get her down, I think she's. I want to say she's medium difficulty. She's not super hard, but she's not super easy either. Like somebody just playing the game is not going to pick up a Willix and do amazing with her. Bacchus, monkey with the suit on. You just press the button. You press the funny button with the ult, and then you stun somebody, and then you drink. Fucking drunk dad simulator right here. But you know what? Actually, nah. I'm kidding myself. He's Gorilla Brain. He's right here. Baron. Now, aspect version is like right here. Aspect version is right here. Non-aspect version is like right here. But the non-aspect version isn't even that good, unless it's in support, and even then, it's not even that great. So most people are going to be running the aspect. So since that's the best version of Baron, it's right here. There's not a lot of thought that goes into Baron. You literally just aspect Baron. You literally just drop kit. Yeah, the 2 can heal you, but you don't really care about the heal because the healing now isn't even all that. And on top of that, the root is probably the hardest part of his kit to hit because it's a skill shot. And even then, again, walk up 3, 2, 1, and it's profit. That's basically it. Now the ultimate can be a little bit weird, but even then, it's just a giant dragging ultimate that you just need to beads against. There's not a lot of thought that needs to go in. Bologna, right here. The OG just click, just hold R2 and walk forward. There's nothing hard about this character. The Bracken, Gorilla Brained. There's a lot of Gorilla Brained characters in this game. Press the button, hit the stun, put a wall up, profit. Cerberus, uh, aspect version. Actually, both versions. Put him right about here. Not super difficult. What makes him a little bit weird is the positioning and knowing how to use your 2 properly and knowing how to basically managing your stun, knowing how to be aggressive with it. And even then, he's not even that hard. He's just awkward because of how much can stop him. And the goodest of boys not that difficult. Right here. Thornernos, some studying needed. Knowing what stance you need to be in with the one camp is not really daunting, but you're gonna need to understand how that works. And because he doesn't have a CC, I mean ultimate positioning is also really important. And to maximize this character, even though he's a hunter, he gets a lot more damage the closer he is, which is kind of different from other traditional hunters. And then when you take into the consideration this aspect, it's even up here because now you lose your range and you have to play at a melee range, and his kit isn't designed for that. So it's weird. I think at the end of the day, he's right about here. Shock. A lot of people might think I'm crazy for this. He's a monkey with a suit on. Barely. He should be here. I hate this character. I hate him. But he's right here. No, actually, you know what? Nope. Nah, I can't rightfully put him here. He's Gorilla Brain. He's right here. Stupid. Hmm. Almost give him. Danza, he's like right here. Stupid. I want to say he's somewhere between here. Mostly here, but I think he deserves to be right about here. Not because I think he's super difficult to play, but unlike other hunters, his burst and his damage isn't as quick. Anhur has an instant stun. Apollo has a one that instantly does all the damage. Donza has multiple ways to get you to stop, kind of like to poke at you and to do damage. Cupid does have a stun, but the stun is on a timer. He does have a second damaging ability, but that damaging ability is really only used for the heal, but you can use it the last hit. The ultimate, and that's about it as far as difficulty goes. And managing his passive is not necessarily hard, but it's not the easiest. It's not exactly like, how do I explain it? He's not brain dead, but he's not difficult either. I think he's right about it. Fenrir, and unfortunately, he's kind of brain dead. I love him and he's bad, but he's right here. He has an auto tracking ability and a stun. There's nothing difficult about this. Ganesha. Ooh, this might be a little controversial. I think he's right here for 2 reasons. One, the regular version of Ganesha still requires you to have good positioning on your ultimate. It still requires you to know who to silence and how to protect the team properly. Your stun can still only affect one person, and it's a casting time. So in a big team fight, that three using that three into somebody is going to leave your team wide open. And again, positioning your ultimate so it has maximum effect is not easy. Then we get into the aspect version, and that is difficult because you need to know the timing and the spacing to Jade Scepter somebody into the ult and hold them there to maximize get. And that takes a lot of practice. Now, you can argue that you can do that, you can do those Ganesha things without it, but it's seen nerfs, so it's not as potent as it used to be. Before the nerfs, yeah, for sure, he was probably like right about here or even here, honestly. But now I think now that he is a little bit difficult. Geb is somewhere between some studying needed and a monkey with a suit on. I think I'm gonna put him right about here because of how difficult it is to manage that one. You know, not pushing the enemy person away from your entire team, knowing how to properly time it in, so you can get the CCNU knock up. Um, Knowing who to put your three on, putting the shield on is going to take a little bit of practice as well. The only easy thing about him for real is his two in the ultimate, and that's because they're instant cast and you get instant benefits from it because it's a knockup or an AoE damaging and building with the aspect. And then again, the ultimate is a giant AoE that's stunned that does health. I think those are the only two things really easy about him. Other than that, I still think some practice is good. One, um, this is difficult for me, but I'm gonna put him here. I don't think Guan Yu is all that, but at the same time, because of how he's made to be in this game, where he's just a cooldown monster, he's he's not all that difficult. But until you get to that point, he is hard to use because you can't just three at somebody and two at somebody who is competent because they're gonna know how to stop you, unless they're into a bad matchup. For example, Guan Yu into Odin, right? One you can do pretty decently into Odin because Odin still has the casting time until he gets his stun. And then he can still deal with him as far as the ult and the two goes because they're insta cast. They're like just really quick. But somebody like Hercules whose stun is instant, who can instantly stop him from doing something, or somebody into like um let's say Thor Solo, who can instant stun him out of his main part of his kit. It basically comes down to who can really deal with him. You know what I'm saying? Like Bologna into Guan Yu is really awkward because Bologna doesn't have anything to stop Guan Yu, but Guan Yu doesn't really have anything to stop Bologna either. So it's a kind of an awkward matchup. But at the end of the day, once Guan Yu hits that middle point in the game and he starts having CDR, he becomes brain dead easy. Because all you have to do is make sure you're with your team, you're constantly hitting your three, you're constantly healing them so you can recycle your abilities, and you're constantly hitting your two on at least one person to two people so you can cycle through your abilities again just to keep on spamming. So he's somewhere around here. Hades. I hate this character. Not because he's broke, but I just hate him as a character. So because I'm biased, I'm putting him here. Hecate. Some studying needed. She's not exactly the hardest character in the world to play, but she's not exactly easy either because she does have a health shield that only protects you against magical damage. She has a stun and a good damaging ability, but the stun you need to know how to cycle through those abilities properly and still get maximum benefit. She doesn't do as much damage as any other god until like late game, and then knowing how to use your two with or without the aspect is going to be important because the two only does more damage with the regular version based on how many abilities your enemies, your allies, or you included, how many abilities are used within that. So if nobody's using abilities within it and you're placing it like after everybody's already dumped everything, it's not going to do as much damage. So preemptively putting it, knowing where to put it, and even with the aspect version, that version is a little bit easier, but it doesn't do as much damage. You just place it down and hope somebody uses an ability with it. And if nobody does, then and they're only focused on using auto attacks, then it loses its value because it doesn't really do anything. However, it is a good deterrent for people who are only ability based because it stops them from wanting to use it to stop that move from doing as much damage as it possibly can. So there's mind games with it. There's a lot of thought process that goes into playing Hecate at the end of the day. So I think some study. Hercules. If you do not use the pull and you only use the damage on the pull and only walk up and stun, he's a gorilla. If you use the pull first before you use the stun, then he's monkey with a suit on. Because hitting that pull consistently isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. It is going to take a little bit of practice. However, still Hercules, and it's still the not the OG, but he is still very much gorilla. He just walked at you, you get stunned by him, you're just dead. It's that simple. You put hydras on him, you put cooldowns on him, you hit them in the back of the head with a rock, and then you shoulder check them, or they're dead. It's not that difficult. He Yi, I'm gonna put him here because base kit without worrying about bounces is not that hard, right? However, to maximize He Yi, you're gonna want to know the bounces, and that requires you to have insane map knowledge, and that's with both the aspect and the non-aspect version. You can get a lot more with just the regular version of him. You can argue that he's only right about here because if you don't worry about the bounces, he still has access to an instant stun if you mark them properly. But if you want to maximize them, then it's still going to require you to know the bounce locations. But with the aspect, it's significantly harder because you need to look away from the person and physically aim at the wall so it can bounce your autos directly at them. And that is also really difficult, especially in a conquest map where the map is way more open and the slightest movement will completely mess up your trajectory. So it actually does require a lot of effort. But if you don't, if you don't worry about the bounces at all, he's probably more like here. But if you're only focused on the bounces to maximize them, he's gonna require a lot of practice. One, not that hard. Is she good? Absolutely not. But she's not that hard. You just hit the funny button. If you the 3 is difficult, and I feel like that should be deserving to put her here. I will leave her here simply because of that 3. But for the most part, she's here. But I'm gonna leave her here. Bots. Again, stun bots is like monkey with a suit on. Regular Hun bots, some studying is going to be needed. Reason being, because you don't have access to that stun and you don't have any CC outside of your ultimate, engagements are very important for him. They're extremely important, knowing when and where to use his kit, because his hardest hitting ability has such a long casting time that you can instantly get stunned out of it if people are paying attention, right? And knowing how to use the teleport on the 3 properly is also really hard. Not really hard, but it is going to take a little bit of practice. Because sometimes you could port to the wrong person, sometimes you mistime it and you port to a minion instead, sometimes you just completely miss, and then on top of that, it's a skill shot, so it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. Late game, he's not as difficult because he'll have cooldowns and he'll have his damage, but outside of that, he's going to be really hard. Now, if you use stun bot, you do lose damage, but you gain utility. I think that is a little bit easier to manage because just having access to a stun so you can it's easier for you to hit your kit makes it to where he's right here now, because now he has 2 forms of CC, his ultimate and his 2. So it makes his engagements a little bit easier, but without it, not the aspect, he's more right here. So he's middle ground in between these 2 places. For the most part, though, I'm going to put him here. Izanami down here. She's not hard to play at all. I feel like, other than Neath, she's quite literally made for people who are learning the game, because her base autos insta clear waves, her 2 slows, and it also dang near insta clear waves. She has an attack speed stim that also has tick damage on it and extra damage on it, so she can not only shred you, but she can shred towers. And then the Enviz Runaway. She's made for people who are first learning the game or not exactly the best at playing carry, and they only want to sneak push and play PvE. So Izanami definitely deserves it. This is going to be controversial. I think Giannis is PhD required because this to play this character optimally is not easy. On paper, he is very simple. On paper, but knowing how to rotate with your team, hitting full screen ultimates requires a lot of prediction. Knowing when to use your three, because the second you, not your three, your one, because the second you use your one on an engagement, you lose all your ability to run away, unless you have CDR or you still have ultimate. So that can still be kind of there. That's kind of knowing when to use your three for the speed buff or using it for the defense break, you know, and because he doesn't, his clear is just okay out of mid lane. Knowing when to clear and when to rotate is going to be very hard for him as well. So I think simply because of how much you have to think about and the potential of this character, he deserves to be up here. Jingwei, I think some studying is going to be needed. She's not exactly the easiest god to play as. Her clear is horrible. Um, Knowing how to use the knock up, knowing when to use the three when you're knocked up into the air, um, I think, and knowing how to position properly with her is going to be a little bit difficult. However, she does have that saving grace of having that passive that instantly gets her to T2s. Um, Whenever she backs and goes try to get back to lane, so it does make her rotating a little bit easier. But her boxing is kind of just subpar. Her clear is very subpar. So positioning and matchup knowledge is going to be very important. Holly, as much as much as I hate this character, non-aspect version, nah, she's right here. As much as I hate this character and I want to put her here, she's kind of right here. Knowing knowing who to put your mark on, knowing when to pop your three properly, and knowing when to pop your ult without just panicking it is very important. Because good Kali players can kill you without the ult. The ult is just a saving grace. Most Kali players that I've seen play her basically engage the ultimate the second they walk in some cases, and it's very stupid. Or they pop it because they're about to kill somebody, but they're about to die to somebody else ganking them, so they pop their ultimate so they can continue chasing them. The person that's still currently running away from them, and is outside of their range. I've seen that happen too. So knowing when to use the ultimate, knowing when to use the three, and knowing how to engage without needing to use the ultimate does take a modicum of a brain cell. Outside of that, and even the aspect version, early game is really hard for her because she doesn't have anything on because she's purely a late game god. But once you get there, it's just hold R too fast. Kepri. Uh, I want to put him. I want to put him here. I'm gonna put him here. He's almost to here, almost to here. But the reason why I have him here is because at the end of the day, the grab is really easy. All you're doing is just throwing out your two and making sure you grab the right person. And no. He's here because again, grabbing the right person, hitting the root on the right person, and then ulting your teammate, the right teammate when they need it, to basically knowing who to prioritize with your ult, or just giving the ult to somebody who's not even close to death because it does give power to them, and basically it makes them basically immortal and gives them extra damage for a certain amount of time. And knowing who to put that on in a team fight is the difference between a good Kepri and a bad Kepri who's just using it as a get out of jail free card. Even though you're going to be using the revive more. Kukulkan, Gorilla Brain. Drop three, run away. Loki, go invisible, ult somebody, run away. Medusa, monkey with the suit on. Because still has at the end of the day, her kit and understanding her kit is very simple. To the wave, free the person, activate your one, auto them, and then ult. Not that hard. Just Now, without the minion wave there, hitting the two can be a little bit hard because it does turn into a skill shot. But you don't even need to do that. You just pop your instead. Then you just three at them and then you two because they're rooted and they get stuck there, so they're forced to eat that too. Mercury, some studying need. He's hard, but he's not this hard because hitting the one of the skill shot is hard. Positioning with him is hard. Rotating him with isn't really that hard, but getting to late game is a little bit hard. He also has a lot of natural counters because he can't, like Ares stops him from being able to use his ult and it stops him from being able to use his three. Anybody who's looking at him, the second he engages, he's such an easy target because he also needs Blink to help him engage without having to use three. Because the second he uses his three, he loses his safety and he becomes a sitting duck. Even though they did add the fact that he can instant cancel his three now, it still takes a second. So and then he does have a CC Union ult, but it has charge time. So I think he's a little bit difficult to use overall, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still kind of Merlin, some studying needed, especially with the aspect. Um, at the end of the day, he is just throwing abilities. I kind of want to put him here with the aspect. I kind of want to put him here because it does require you to understand what the each ability does and how they synergize with each other. Um, it does also require you to be able to combo on uh, basically at the drop of a dime because you don't know what's going to be coming up next. Yeah, some combinations are going to be easy, like Void 1, Ice 2, right? Or Void 1, Fire 1. It can be a little bit hard, but then you start getting like Void 2, Ice 1. You start getting Ice 1, Void 2. You start getting Fire 2, Fire 2, Void 2. And then you need to be able to adjust quickly to where your abilities are going to land because they're not always going to be in the same exact spot because remember you can have two of your ones or two of your twos, so it can be a little bit overwhelming for somebody who's first getting into the game. Base Merlin is more like right here because you're just switching stances and you just got to kind of understand what each stance does, but it is still going to require you to understand what every Mordred. I might be biased, but I think he deserves to be right here. I think he deserves to be right here. Being able to dash cancel properly, knowing when and where to engage, when to use your big ult and when to use your small ult, when to use the heal one or when to use the DPS one, right? It can take a little bit of time to get used to him. Like somebody who's first picking up the character is still on paper still very easy because he has a million abilities he can throw at you, but optimizing him is where it's going to be a little bit harder. But that's not super far off. I still think some studying and some practice is going to be needed. Neath, down here. We're not going to even talk about Neath right here. Nemesis, aspect version, I think is going to be right here. Non-aspect version is still kind of right here as well. Knowing when to use your three with the aspect and knowing who to use your ultimate on and when to use your ultimate on is going to be really hard. He doesn't have any CC, so any hard CC. So knowing when to use your when to use your two and how to use your dashes properly is going to be really difficult because most people will think, yeah, you just dash through them twice, but if you dash through them twice and your positioning is bad through the second dash, then you could potentially let a kill go, which is obviously bad. So knowing how to use that is going to take a little bit of effort. Um, the ultimate with the non-aspect version, you basically just throw it on a tank and call it a day. But when you're trying to kill a squishy with it, it's still fairly easy. It's just the rest of her kit that can be a little bit daunting. So I think she's right here. Nuwa. I don't know how to feel about Nuwa because she's not brain dead. The ult is brain dead, but she's not entirely brain dead. I'm gonna put it right here. Odin. He's right here. Uh, knowing when to use the attack speed stem instead of the stun, and um laning phase is a little bit weird. I think we can basically say that the best himself, he just doesn't really have any position to play. So every place that he plays in is harder for him to perform well in the grand scheme of things. But does that make him hard? Not necessarily. I think he's more monkey with a suit on than anything. He may be closer to down here, but he's more right here than people like to admit because at the end of the day, his cooldowns really aren't even that great. He does have safety, but that's only because the health shield is so annoying. But the leap is on a really long cooldown. Knowing when to use the three and how to use the three that benefits you the most in the current situation. You need more attack speed for your team, or do you need that stun right now? Right? And if you use the stun right now, it's on a longer cooldown than just giving your team the attack speed buff, or you're just yourself the attack speed. But at the end of the day, he can't just put you in a box and you can't go nowhere, and he's gonna be tanky. Um, Once you do get CDR on, he's very annoying to kill because shield leap, stun, shield leap, wall. So he's not the hardest, but I don't think he's entirely brain. Pele aspect version. I want to say is here. Regular Pele is actually not even that. I think she deserves to be right here. Because I honestly I can't even explain Pele. Honestly, I can't because she's not hard, but you could tell the difference between a good Pele and a bad Pele. At least you used to be able to. Now she's kind of just dumb, but you know what? Nah, she's just right now. She's just stupid. She's right here. Side in. This might. He's right here. No, he's right here. Triple ult. He's an alt bot. There's no thought process behind Poseidon. You drop your three below somebody and then you ult them. Everything else is fluff. Princess Bari. You can pick this character up and just play her. In a way, if you have experience with, if Smite 2 is your first game, you could argue she's right here. You could argue that because managing the enhanced mode, learning that she actually has a stun and knowing how to consistently use the stun. Well placed team ults. And that's not, I'm not saying that's hard, but when you're trying to be team oriented, knowing when to drop that ult down might be a little confusing for people. Not because it's hard, because it is a giant AoE that does damage, but most people are going to be using it like a Kali ult to save them from dying. Knowing how to use it aggressively and not worrying about the revive portion on it, or using the revive to save a teammate, does take a little bit of a mind shift. It's not necessarily that. And again, knowing how your enhanced state affects your abilities and learning how to play around that does take a little bit of effort. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but it does. Raw is a monkey with a suit on because he is nothing but skill shots except that 2 and that 3. But his hardest hitting abilities are both skill shots. To hit at max range, obviously, yes, you can just walk up to them and hit the ability. But if you're not tanky and you're building like a squishy, hitting it max range to play at a safer distance is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do because they are both extremely slow and requires very good precision. However, that does not stop him from being extremely easy to play and just pick up. Because at the end of the day, you do just one the wave and then pop your 2 and auto somebody to death. That's literally it. But knowing how to play outside of just being able to do that, modicum of a brain cell. I'll give them that. Rama, the ultimate is hard. The ultimate alone is like here. The ultimate alone is like right here. Everything else though, as a whole, he's like right here. He's he is very easy because you don't. There's nothing you really have to worry about with him. It's just managing the, and that's with or without the aspect. It's just managing your arrows and popping your stim, and then back flipping away or back flip or front flipping in. You know, there's a little bit of thought when it comes to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Rama is hard because Rama is just kind of like on her. He's just meant to hold R2. Everything in his kit revolves around him being able to hold R2. It doesn't change him, and neither the aspect or his regular version changes that. He's just meant to hold R2. So even though the ultimate is hard to hit, that doesn't mean he himself is difficult. So he's there. Scylla. I don't know how to feel about Scylla. I want to say she's here. No, here. Yeah, she's here. I think a lot of people could agree with this that she's kind of right here. She's not brain dead, but she's not hard either. So she's right here. Sobek. Do I even need to explain this? Soul. Drop 2 on wave, pop 1 profit. Hold R2. Sun Wukong. As much as I hate this character, monkey with a suit on. And it's funny because he's a monkey with a suit on. Susanoo. Some studying needed. Knowing how to combo properly and and when you incorporate auto canceling, he's up here. When you're not, he's right here. Because Susanoo's not as hard as people make him out to be, but he does take a little bit of practice. Because a lot of these guys that you see on here have a set combo that they can do. And there's not really a lot of changes between that. Um, however, Susanoo isn't really like that. He does have a combo that he can do, but he doesn't just have one combo. He has a million of them. You can pull into 3. You can 3 into 1 and then pull them. You can 1 stop, pull, 1 stop, 3 stop, 1. There's a lot you can do with this character that is that is very fluid. It's creative. Susanoo is very fun to play, but to play him optimally requires a lot of patience and practice. But you know who doesn't really require that? Thanatos. Thanatos is very brain dead. You don't think with Thanatos. Well, he's right here. I'll throw y'all a bone. Thanatos is more right here than he is brain dead. But my God, I can't type. But he's not all that hard either. Morgan with the aspect is actually right here. Base kit she seems very easy until you need to know how to use the clone to teleport out properly. Until you need to know when and who to transform into when you're playing tanky. When you're trying to fight in a team fight. Laning phase is very easy for her. It's the other part of the game that is difficult. Knowing where to position, who to stun, who to focus on, and especially knowing how to use the teleportation properly. Because if you have her mastered, you don't die. And you can always turn a game around. She can hard carry. She really can. But she's not easy. Because your ult also requires the person you're turning into have a brain. Because if their build is bad and you turn into them, you're just going to be them, but with a bad build. So it's it it can be a little bit difficult knowing who to turn into on the enemy team who's mostly fed, but knowing how to use them because Morgan also requires that you have knowledge of everybody. Everybody. You need to be good with everybody, not just her. So, she definitely deserves to be up here. Or monkey with a suit on. It's Monkey with a suit on. I'll be 100% real with you. It's Monkey with a suit on. He's easy, but the wall placements and putting them down so your team doesn't get screwed by you is weird. Hitting the ultimate is weird because it's telegraphed now, and it has a very long casting time. Knowing how to poke with the one, positioning, but you hit any of that kit, you hit any of his stuns, the ultimate or the two, you just throw abilities at them until they. Uller, do not let people gaslight you. This character's hard. A lot of Uller mans are gonna try to sit here and tell you that, oh, he's not that hard. No, he's hard. Uller is hard because Uller is nothing but skill shots. Now, granted, you hit that stun, everything else is easy to hit because then you just need to hit the stun, walk up, and then drag your reticle down to you. However, it's hitting the stun that is going to be hard for you. Hitting your 1 at max range is going to be hard. Hitting your 3 at max range is going to be hard. Being aggressive with him is going to be hard. Because a good Uller will pub stomp a lot of people, right? Even at higher levels of play right now, Uller is considered very, very strong, which is crazy because he was just D tier a couple weeks ago, like a month ago. But now he's S tier dumb. So people are thinking, oh, he's S tier dumb. He must be brain dead easy. No, that's not the case. He's still hard. He's still Uller. It's just now he's one of the few guys in the game who can actually one shot you if he hits a stun. But you need to be able to hit the stun. I promise you're going to see a difference between a good Uller and a bad Uller, and it's going to be 100% night and day. Even the bad Uller who can kind of hit stunts, you're going to see the difference between a good one and a bad one. Because it's hard. He's not easy. Vulcan. This might be controversial. I think he's here. Not because I think his kit is hard, even though he does have nothing but 3 skill shots. Even though I don't think he's all that, it's his matchup chart that makes him difficult. Because Vulcan doesn't really play well into anybody, really. He doesn't have any real winning matchups unless you are fighting a melee character in solo. But even then, the second they realize that they could just walk at you is when it becomes a lot harder to play Vulcan. When you take him as a mage, once Agni hits 5, he can't put turns down anymore, and he can poke at a space that Vulcan isn't used to. Kukulkan, don't even need to talk about that. Just drop wave and he outclears you. Anubis might be one of the few people that he can kind of play well into, but even then, he has tick damage that can instantly get rid of his turrets, and Anubis can play up against him. So it's more 5-5 than anything. Nuwa, he probably plays really well into, but no one plays Nuwa, so it doesn't matter. He definitely doesn't play well into Neath because there's not any point that he's safe from Neath. Who else? Scylla probably struggles with Vulcan a little bit until she gets like 1 or 2 cards on. Then she doesn't care about him anymore because the turns aren't scary anymore. Janus, safety and can get across the wall. There's no matchup that Vulcan... And then Vulcan on top of that is immobile, so he's a victim to people who are hard divers. But Vulcan has the benefit of being one of the hardest hitting mages and carry mages in the game. So he does require a little bit of matchup knowledge. That's what makes him difficult. Not that he's difficult, but it is going to require you to know how to play into a lot of these gods so you know when, where, and why to put turns down. And getting used to hitting full screen ults. That's another thing. But other than that, he's like right here. Yamoja, PhD. One of the hardest guardians in the game to play. And a lot of people are going to look at her kit and be like, oh, she has no cooldowns. She has regenerating mana. Oh, I could just spam all I want. No, you can't. You cannot do that. Because, God forbid, you start spamming, trying to kill somebody, doing all this damage, and then you don't have the kit you need to actually be a good support to help your team. Because you're out of Omi. Knowing when and where to use your kit, and then being able to hit the 3 on an enemy god to push them back to you, that's also really weird to do. Knowing how to position your ultimate, that's also really weird to do. And again, if I haven't made this point enough, managing your Omi so you can always protect your team and set your team up properly is not easy to do. There is a reason there is not a lot of high level Yamoja players in ranked. So Yamoja definitely deserves to be up there. Ymir, right here. He's easy. He's again kind of like Athena, meant to be one of the easier gods in the game to play, especially for guardian support role. Plus, he has the added benefit of also doing a lot of damage. So there's that. The only thing that may be a little bit hard about him is placing his walls properly, and knowing how to use them for your escape or to cut somebody off. That could be a little weird, but at the end of the day, he's really easy. Zeus, same thing. One of the easier gods in the game to play, and his hardest hitting ability you cannot miss. Only thing hard about Zeus is the fact that he has no run move, so he is a dive victim. But even then, Jade Scepter is in the game right now, so he does have that option to be able to go something with utility because his base kit does so much damage. But this is my overall tier list about the difficulty of the characters to play. Let me know what you guys think about the current state of the gods. Thank y'all for watching, and y'all take care.